Hi, my name's Gregg Nathan. I recently got out of the army to serve God and help people. I've got an interesting story I like to tell you guys. I spent 26 years in the military, so 13 years in the infantry and 13 years with the Royal New Zealand Engineers. When I was based over in Iraq, my mother was dying. In the process of coming back, it took me about 3 or 4 days, and arriving home I found out that my mother had passed away. When I was at the Tangi, something happened. There were groups of Christians there, and all they did was sing 24/7. It was like being in heaven and listening to angels. Even though I was sad, it was quite weird. I was actually happy, and when I look back, it was probably the happiest time of my life. I was just trying to figure out why, but I do know now that was God blessing my mother. My brother told me that my mother had given her life to God, given her heart to the Lord. I had to comprehend that. I didn't know actually what it meant. I said, what does that mean? And he said she made a decision to give her soul to Christ, and that's all it takes to get into heaven. And I couldn't understand that. I didn't know, just took so little anyway to do that, but God says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father, but if you ask me through the Son, then you're in. So I had to think about that. I remember this guy standing up giving his testimony. He was ex-military, and it sounded like he was talking to me. Where he stood up was right next to me. His testimony was quite hard out. And he was an alcoholic, beat up his wife, and when he was talking, he was talking about some, the problems and the transitions, the problems he had in his life, and I thought he was talking to me. He was sort of saying my story, the alcoholic side of it, yep. And I had sort of grown accustomed to that sort of culture and that lifestyle. But I knew it was bad for me, but I didn't know how. But when you hear other people sort of talk about it and speak the truth, that's quite powerful. And that's what testimony is. It's people going up and saying, man, I found it really hard. But I'm prepared to stand up and tell you all the bad things about me. If that's going to help you, then cool. So he mentioned that, and alcohol was a big problem in my life, and I thought I didn't have a problem, but I did, and I'm glad I don't do it anymore. That experience, I think it touched a lot of people, but it really touched me, and I didn't know how to react because I didn't know what was going on, and I kept it in myself for quite a long time because I had to rationalise that process and what was going on, and that was God coming into my life and going, you ready to give up your old self? And do some stuff for me, and I was going, you talking to me? And he was talking to me. That's when God convicted me. I went back to the army, and I still had that conviction. I had to try and rationalise that decision, rationalise what conviction was for me. And that process took several months, maybe 7 months when I look back. But when I understood, that God had a purpose in my life, that's when I gave my heart to God. And it was instant. Because I'm a soldier, I'm used to taking instructions and orders. I didn't have a problem with what I was going to do. But I did have a problem thinking about it and rationalising what I was going to lose versus what God's calling on me. When I did, it was quite instant. I gave up the lifestyle of the military and the old life or the worldly life, and I just put it to one side. I didn't have no problems whatsoever. I think I was trained anyway to carry out God's will. I think He trained me for the specific experiences overseas in Afghanistan, Iraq, Bosnia, Singapore, Malaysia and Thailand, because He wanted me to do stuff that other people couldn't do, or other Christians couldn't do. Why He picked me, I have no idea. But I'm glad He did, because He saved my life. So I was actually dealing with two things. One, my own conviction and making that change. Two, how other people would perceive me. And it took me a while to sort of get past that. I was actually quite scared, to making that change because how my mates would perceive me. I didn't really care if they didn't accept me. I said, I've got a job to do. I said, I love you guys anyway because, you guys are closer than my own brothers and sisters. I said, we'll never separate there. It's just that my belief and my direction and purpose is different now. And then once they got their head around that, and they were really cool with it. I suppose you get to a point in your life where you sort of, what do you stand for, God? Or do you stand for other people? And you have to drop the whole thing, image, pride thing and all that. I didn't have a problem. I really, at that point, I was really convicted and I knew exactly what I was doing. getting up and publicly saying that I was a Christian in front of all my peers, I think around about 500 or 1,000 people, you know, and giving testimony when I was over in Afghanistan. Those were the sort of the next little challenges, you know, because when I had to sort of say that, I had to walk that. You know, the army is different, you know, we're judged on what we do, not what we say, so I didn't have a problem with what I was saying because it was matching up with what I was doing. I left the army last year after 26 years, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, but the actual getting out of the army was a problem because I couldn't leave the money behind. You know, the money was actually quite a hard thing, and I had to think about that. So once again, I had to sort of go through that process of what I was doing, and got to be half Christian and half in the world. But no, when you step out in faith, I think that's when God blesses. When you initiate, that's when He blesses you. I left it all. I made a decision that money was not my sole purpose in life. Go out there and help the people. You don't need nothing. You've been blessed by living this long, and now you're giving back to the community as a way to sort of give back to God's kaupapa. It is a process, you know, nothing is magical. You know, I hear all these Christians saying, oh, you know, it's beautiful and all that, but me, nah, it's actually a struggle. You know, because as well as be a representative of God, you've got to sort of deal with your challenges every day, because no one is perfect, but that's not an excuse to go back into the world. But I like this word I sort of thought about anyway. There is such thing as a perfect effort. You know, God sees that. He sees the intentions and motives of your heart, not necessarily the external side of you on the outside of you trying to do a lot of good things, because salvation's already given. There's a lot of values in the army that I'm glad I learned, like sacrifice, obedience. Integrity is a big word we use. That means doing the right thing when people aren't looking. So as a Christian, that's a big thing. You know, I look at Christians, they try and act the part, you know, so they can be accepted by other Christians or other people. But you know, being a Christian is being accepted by God. So when you die, you know, you're accountable to the man, not necessarily other people. So that keeps me humble, and it keeps me rock solid, knowing that I don't have to sort of live up to other people's expectations, but I do have to give 110% because that's my role and purpose while I'm left here on the earth. My change of heart, I suppose, for God was He loved me unconditionally. And when I actually really understood that, you know, I had to sort of think about it, and I said, man, He loves me for all the bad things that I've done. And I never knew. And when I understood that concept, you know, that you know, it doesn't matter how bad you are, you know, if you turn to God at any time, He loves you unconditionally. So when I understood that concept, that's when I really knew, you know, God was a real deal. But when you can actually go out there and start walking it, you know, that's probably deeper conviction. So yeah.